Yeah, I think that some of the main drivers for microgrid growth really stem from the need to add reliability and to generate resilience in power distribution and power consumption. I think that with the events such as Sandy, such as Katrina, Fukushima, both the community from a individual user, but also from the institutional user, people have realized that power is key to business. Power is key to be able to generate value, and without power, it's almost impossible to do today's business. Everything requires a computer, everything requires to be connected, communications, the ability to do supply chain logistics. So microgrids provide a way to bring that assurance, to bring that insurance to your ability to do the business at hand. When we start talking about critical infrastructure such as hospitals, such as roads, such as waste treatment plant, water treatment plant, and other means by which services are provided to citizens, those infrastructure used to have generators that you would turn on and off as needed. But there's an opportunity for those infrastructures to actually generate the power, add that additional element of resilience, and potentially sell that back or store it. But at the end of the day, it allows that infrastructure to maintain that service that's expected both from the everyday user, but also as you're connected to everybody else. A hospital is connected to a data center. A hospital is connected to somebody who runs ambulances. A hospital is connected to somebody who brings food and things of the sort. So that interconnectedness and interdependence is another critical driver. What we are seeing in the marketplace is more interest in microgrids, both as a means for resilience, but also as a means to be able to island yourself and manage some of the issues with the connectedness to the grid itself. So if the grid is brittle, or at least in the parts of the United States where you do have power that go out, what we're seeing is institutions are interested in investing in that. What we're also seeing is that the Pentagon, the military, is also very interested in microgrids. Think of bases as their own critical infrastructure nodes. They have to be up 24/7. Many of those provide critical services remotely to other parts of the world. So not only the base has to be up, but the services that are generated on that base, whether that's a mission or whether that's support to someone else, also has to be up. So you've got that extra layer, and within that particular mission, you may have some applications, you may have some operations that need to be up. So they also are interested. So when you start adding it all up, the military is looking at it and saying, well, maybe we need a microgrid. We need to inject some renewables. We need to take advantage of the physical location. Geography allows us to add PV or wind, and we need to be able to store this power. We need to add it to the base load, and the way to do that would be a microgrid, and when you assemble it, maybe a smart grid. Once again, the issue is how do you connect to the grid, how do you make sure that the power flows properly, and how do you finance it, and how do you get some of the investments to make that work? I think that's a great question because utilities play a key role. They own the right-of-way, they own the transmission lines, and they're regulated. You have to think of utilities as a partner. So clearly, the first question is, where in which state within the United States, is that going to be feasible? In terms of Utility 2.0, they have to deal with the issue of being able to accept another independent party that's providing a load. They have to be able to make the power flow in different ways and in different means. They have to be able to control it. They have to be able to price it. They have to be able to make sure it's reliable. They have to make sure that somebody who's injecting that power into the transmission line doesn't bring something down. So the utility itself, from a technical perspective, has a lot of growing up and a lot of upgrades that need to happen. But also from the financial and the investment perspective, the utility also has to deal with the fair and equitable way of pricing out this additional capability and capacity, and also passing on the cost. So this is something that's going to take some time, but Utility 2.0 is here to stay. There is a radical shift in the way the business is being run, and it is something that might take some time, but it's clearly is going to be addressed. Absolutely. I think the topic of resiliency is very important when it comes to power. If you think about what a city needs to make sure that the population is safe and secure and businesses operating at optimum level, water, power, housing, and food are critical. And power is essential. There isn't anything that's done today that doesn't require power, whether you're communicating, whether you're commuting, whether you're talking, or whether you're seeing the news. There's something that's connected to power. And being able to maintain that power in terms of it is on and it is powering the devices, we're talking in terms of Six Sigma. We're talking 99.69s behind it. With weather events, that has become an issue. With the age of the grid, that has become an issue. And with people moving into cities and putting a load on the requirements, that has become an issue. So resilience effectively becomes a means by which cities can start addressing those multiple variables that are affecting the grid, power generation, power transmission, and power use. Microgrids, smart grids is a way of making sure that you can balance the load, you can balance the power levels, and you can make sure that supply and demand is kept in balance. Resilience also means that if something bad were to happen, you have a structured plan to come up back to speed so that you can keep operating in the way they're used to, so that you don't have a week's worth of time that has gone by before you can bring power on. It's going to be a critical issue because most of the decision-making process and the governance of businesses is done electronically. It's done in a manner where you're communicating to people who are spread all around the world, and you're communicating instantly. And if you don't have the power to do so, then business will go somewhere else. And there is a vested interest for both the businesses and as individual users to make sure that the power stays on. And the demand for resilience, or the need for resilience, is being communicated in different ways, but it's there. I think it was a great question in terms of local and global. This goes back to, is power a common good or a social good? And there will be different connotations around each one of those topics. If we're talking about a social good, then the idea of fairness and equitable provision, as well as the cost associated with it, is an important factor. But if we're talking about a common good with different tier pricing, then it has different connotations with it. In order to optimize power, you would have to look at a large state, such as New York, not just as the city of New York, because you may have excess power in other parts of the state, but potentially not if in the city of New York. So how do you optimize the generation of power, and how do you optimize the distribution of power, and the local use of power is going to be key. So modeling it out and doing the exercises so you can see whether the country as a whole has enough power, and whether the issue is the transmission of the power and the use of the power. Clearly the pricing associated with it and the rules, regulations associated with it would need to be changed. But if the country doesn't have enough power, then an understanding where to generate the power and how to generate the power at a level that benefits all is also going to be a consideration. So I think the topic of local optimum and global optimum is an important element of how to make sure that the United States has power, plenty of it at a cost that's affordable, but also has an element of renewables in it. I think a very important takeaway was the interest that people have in microgrids and resilience associated with microgrids. It was fascinating for me to hear the variety of opinions from lawyers, from social activists, from researchers, from generators, and from technologists, companies that implement and install microgrids. Clearly, the business case is there. Whether the education is there at the individual level, I'm not sure, but that's something that's can be worked on. So that's the good news about that. And another takeaway was that interest going forward in terms of what microgrids can and cannot do, and especially for a city like New York, which is a mega city, more than 10 million people, the fact that the local utility is very interested in it, that the local, both at the state and the city level, they're interested in putting forth the investment and creating the demand is fascinating because it may be a model for other states to follow. So for me, it was a very important and significant takeaway.